Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week, although the majority of the Gospel reading is about the feeding of the 5,000, we're actually going to be thinking about a little bit after that and what it means that people were trying to make Jesus the King for them. And so this week I've been thinking about the rural challenge of trying to choose a church leader for a church community. It's a difficult thing for a church community, group of church communities, to choose who they want to have as their leader. Do they want to have someone who is very, very good at admin, who is really good at thinking, well, we've got 9, 10, 11 churches in our group, and then the way that we want to split the services round and who wants to take them there and how will that affect everybody as a group and the individual places where people meet and the church community as a whole and as a part. Do we want someone who is always on top of the admin, who knows where every register is, how up to date it is, what needs sorting out about it, where all the burial records are, who can actually do that? Do we want someone who might naturally not be good at admin but be very, very good at working with people? Or someone who might not be so good at working with children but is very, very good at working with older people? Or someone who is very traditional, or someone who has experience in leading other things? It's a really difficult thing to think, if we were choosing a church leader, what are the characteristics of a church leader that we need? In the Church of England, in rural ministry, we advertise for church leaders, for vicars, for rectors, for priests in charge. They have different job titles, often from a purely historical point of view. That's why that arises. But they have to choose, they have to decide, this is what we'd like to have in our job advert, in our job specification. This is the sort of leader that we'd like. And it's a very difficult thing to choose. What is it that is the most important thing that you want in your church leader in the place where you are, especially in a rural community where travelling and all the other complexities come into play in that choice? The Gospel reading for this week is from John chapter 6 verses 1 to 21, but I've mainly been thinking about some of the verses towards the end of that chapter this week. So the beginning of that is the feeding of the at least 5,000 people, probably more than 5,000 people, because they only counted the men and there will have been some women and children there as well. So the feeding of the 5,000, which is an amazing thing, but then the verses after it are very interesting as well. They haven't left them out of the storytelling here, and I think it's really interesting. So it says that after Jesus had fed all these people and this whole situation, Jesus realised that they were going to try and come and take him and make him king by force. That they were wanting to come and take him to make him king by force. And so Jesus ran away. He left, so he couldn't do that. He went away and hid. The disciples took the boat part way across the lake. Jesus walked out to them on the lake, and then they don't really know. The disciples thought he was coming into the boat, then all of a sudden they were at the other side. So it's quite a strange situation for the disciples, that they've been involved in this kind of miraculous day, and then all of a sudden Jesus leaves because he doesn't want to be made king by force, and they sail across the lake. Jesus comes to them, and then all of a sudden they're on the other side of the lake. These people who have been at the feeding of the 5,000, the crowds, the masses, they want Jesus to be their king. They want Jesus to be their king. They want to force Jesus to be the king that they want him to be. And it's been an interesting week in leadership this week, and it's an interesting time. We have the presidential elections coming up in America. We have a new government in the UK, and I've been really thinking about what it is that we want from a king. Do we see, or a ruler, someone who's going to lead us? What is it that we want from a king or a ruler, someone who's going to lead us. Now, it's interesting that we have the story of the 5,000 immediately before the little line that says they wanted Jesus to be king. They were going to force him to be king. How much was that just because he had just made their lives easier? They'd had a day where they had food that they hadn't had to buy, that they hadn't had to work for, that they hadn't had to toil for. Did they want more of that? Did they just want him to be a king who was going to be exhibiting that kind of generosity and without them having to work for it? Was that the sort of king that they wanted? Did they want hope? Did they want the sort of hope, the sort of new place that Jesus seemed to be able to deliver to them? Did they want him to free them from the yoke of oppression that they were under? What did they see in Jesus? See, what the crowds didn't see, though, was they didn't see that Jesus knew that that wasn't the right thing for him. They didn't see, well, they knew that Jesus ran away, but they didn't see that side to Jesus. And the disciples saw the side of Jesus that was walking across the lake. They saw that side of Jesus who was walking across the lake. And in any situations where you need to choose a leader, it's hard to know what motivates us to choose a leader. Is it that they are good? Is it that they are generous? Do we think about the short-term facts of having had the bread and the fish and food and things to eat? Do we think about longer-term things? What is it that motivates us to choose a leader for us? And in this year, while there will be a lot of leadership choices made, and some leadership choices have already been made for nations, it's important for us to pray for people who are put in a position of leadership, that they will be able to accept and rule well, that they will be able to carry that burden which is upon them. The Dibley moment for the week this week is something which happened to me last week when I was leading Evensong in one of our church communities. I actually put my hand into the bookshelf where the vicar sits to take out a book of common prayer and opened it on the page that I wanted to use for the intercessions, and it said there that we should be praying for King George. Now, George is no longer the king in the UK. It hasn't been for a very long time. However, I did reflect that if they hang on to the book, it will come round again. That's it for the Dibley Diaries this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week, and a week where you can pray for and encourage your leaders.